Hi everyone, welcome to the weekly crypto feed podcast. And as you can probably tell, it's about cryptocurrency, but we should start off with who we are. So I'm one of your hosts. I'm Stefan Lin. I actually just graduated from Boston University with a BA in neuroscience. So it's pretty off the path, but I think that really just does speak about how exciting cryptocurrency is and how it's like so pervasive and so well known within different disciplines, and it's not just something that like people in finance are interested in. So just to be clear, we're not in any way, shape, or form like super duper experts. We're really just here to learn more about it. With you guys, our audience. So my other co-host is Alex Yip.
Yeah. Hi there. My name is Alex Yip. I'm your other co-host, and my background, I actually just graduated as well from NYU Stern School of Business. Studied a bit of finance there, marketing, information systems, and management. I did everything, but I decided to go with information systems and management in the end. I just like computers, I'm a bit nerdy like that. And I think it's good that Stefan said this podcast we are not in any way, shape, or form experts or financial advisors. We just want to talk about Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, altcoins, blockchain in a digital format, and we want to kind of set that precedent up so that podcast listeners know that we're not experts. We just want to learn with the listeners, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, we just want to set that out straight right in the beginning. But we did want to give you guys a little bit of a background too. And so Stefan, when did you start getting into cryptos?
I'm trying to think the earliest.
Because I can tell you when I did. I mean, you already know the story about that.
So.
But what about you?
For Bitcoin, I mean, I've always known the term. I think I actually first heard about it with one of the podcasts from Joe Rogan.
Oh man!
I don't know if you remember. This is a while ago, but I sent you that link to Andreas Antonopoulos. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but I think he's one of the few people that is like 100% on Bitcoin.
He is literally you're absolutely right. He's living. He's purely living his entire life on cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
He's not fiat at all.
And I guess just like to condense it, this is a guy that goes around talking about cryptocurrency and the utility behind it, and it's understandable because he's coming from a perspective where he's traveling a lot, and he would always have he would always call his bank in advance and say, hey, I'm not going to be in this country the next day. Could you not freeze my account? It's actually me. And then lo and behold, when he gets to the second country, they freeze his account and they're like, hey, what happened? So, there's a lot of advantages to Bitcoin in general. We have to realize that it's a lot to explain, but even just a rudimentary understanding doesn't mean that you're out of the game. You can still, have your share of the cake of this trend. So
this hype, this trend, this bubble.
I think it's a bubble. You think it's.
I know. Our viewers, our listeners will very soon catch on.
Yeah, we have very different views, which I think is great because it balances out the perspective that the podcast has.
I think it's awesome.
I know that you're very hopeful and excited when Bitcoin, like this week, broke 10K.
Oh my God. It broke it a week ago.
It freaks me out how fast
it broke it a week ago.
Yeah.
I know, yeah, we can talk about that. But let's just, for the viewers. So yeah, I got into the Bitcoin and blockchain space. This goes far as back as when I was in high school, when one of my friends, he actually asked me about, since in high school I was the kind of the kid who knew stuff about business, but I really didn't know anything about business back then. And he asked me I don't know if he wants me to share his name on the podcast. That's why I'm not gonna say his name. But he's a close friend of mine, and he asked me when we were sophomores or juniors, which was like when in like 2012, 2011 range. He asked me if I ever heard of a Bitcoin, and I said no. And he explained to me what a Bitcoin was, and he said how it's essentially a decentralized currency where no government can kind of intervene or track what you're doing with it. And I said, oh, well, what's it backed by? And he said, oh, well, it's not backed by anything. Like how the US is backed by the Federal Reserve, Bitcoin is not backed by anything except for its network of nodes that are running the entire blockchain, and there's nothing else besides that. And when I found that out, I was like, it's a scam. And that was when Bitcoin was 7 cents.
Yeah. Isn't that
7
crazy?
cents.
Yeah. And
miners would get 50 Bitcoins per. It was ridiculous back then, just shooting out Bitcoins.
But there's
like
no way.
printing
There's no way we
Bitcoins.
could have known that it was going to become so popular as such a.
Right, yeah.
You know.
You can't. And these kind of markets, in any kind of securities market, there's no, or asset market, there's no should have, could have, would have, because
Yeah, you can't.
2020 vision, hindsight, whatever they say. What is that? What is that?
Hindsight's always 2020.
2020? Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and that's something
So
that
that's-
I feel like a lot of people that I do talk to Bitcoin about, they always think, oh my God, dude, if I bought this, 10 years ago, I would have
Yeah.
made millions of dollars. And I'm like, dude, if you're like 10 years ago, you were like
Yes.
10. Like, calm yourself.
Yeah, you can't.
There's
You
no
just
way you
can't
would have
do that.
known.
Yeah. You can't beat yourself up for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
anyways.
I think it's so interesting because it's, especially with how technology gets more updated at a quicker pace. Like you can probably see like our smartphones, right? How our smartphones developed. Our smartphones now would just like completely obliterate the competition back when like the brick phones first came out, right? So I think we're on like an exponential rise. So it doesn't surprise me that Bitcoin rose to, I think what this morning is like close to 11K. And it doesn't surprise me,
my
but
gosh.
it does worry me because I think we're like flying, we're flying by without like
We are.
checking all of our check boxes,
Mirrors,
Yeah. So
check boxes.
yeah. So let's talk about some news for the week. Yeah. I guess we could just pick out some things that we thought were pretty interesting, and maybe some things that we should just keep an eye on. Just like on a radar, because again, it's such a volatile and unstable market right now in terms of like you never know what's gonna skyrocket or what's gonna tank, but that's what makes it so exciting.
I know. And it attracts so many different people. So I want to remind listeners who are investing in this space that you have to be careful. This thing can go to zero.
Yeah, of course. And I mean,
So be mindful. of
I'm
that.
sure as more podcasts come out, you'll see that Alex typically has the more optimistic view, and I usually have the more pessimistic view.
It's very true. I'm very bullish on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general. I'm very hopeful in that way,
Yeah.
and you'll understand. You'll get the gist very
Yeah.
fast that Stefan is very bearish, and he has a negative outlook on the technology.
I don't think it's.
right.
I would like to assume what is the worst case scenario, and like, how do we prevent that? You know what I mean? Like, I'm very much prepared for the worst, and you're very much hope for the best.
I know. It's gonna be a funny juxtaposition.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about CME, which is the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and how they announced this is huge for Bitcoin because CME is essentially the world's largest exchange for securities and assets. And when they announced a few months ago, I think it was, and not a few months ago, maybe 6 weeks ago-ish. It's December 2nd now. They actually announced that they're going to have a futures on the exchange, and this is going to let people who are not really in, the investing game on Coinbase, Poloniex, Bittrex, whichever exchange you use for. Those are all Bitcoin and cryptocurrency exchanges, by the way. This is going to allow the regular trader or investor to get in on the price action for Bitcoin. And the reason why I personally believe Bitcoin rose yesterday was because they announced that it's going to be live December 18th, according to Cointelegraph.com at least. And
Yeah, I mean,
and for those of you who don't know what, this is huge. Like everyone is going to have access now, and because of that, I believe Bitcoin went up for this reason, like $1,000, which is about like 12% in a day.
yeah, it's nuts. But I mean, I feel like that we're gonna expect to see a lot of these things. And I mean, I'm more on the side that Bitcoin is kind of a bubble. I know you completely disagree with me, but I don't think that it's gonna crash anytime soon, is what I'm saying. I think there's gonna be a lot more technology, kind of similar to what the CME, how it basically streamlines it, makes it a lot easier for more people to, get a piece of that cake. And I think that as we have more technology that does that, or there's more awareness about Bitcoin, I think its stock will continue to rise.
Yes. And well, for the listeners who don't know what like a futures is, it's not exactly Bitcoin, but just think about it as something that is created, a product that's created that closely tracks the price of Bitcoin, and it will be very close. The movements will be very similar, if not exact. They're not going to be exactly the price, but the movement up down, that's going to be very, very similar to how actually Bitcoin moves. So, and I also agree with you, Stefan. Like, institutional money is coming. On Coinbase, they announced, I think about a week ago, two, how they're going to institutions will be able to actually like start coming in, and like huge hedge funds are going to be coming in with lots like big player money, like shark money. Like it's getting very serious, like how our current financial institutions are viewing Bitcoin. It's no longer a joke, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It could be hype. It could be very much. I think it's in bubble mode myself, but it's in bubble mode the right way, which means it's volatile in an upwards trend over time, which means it'll play out. That's why I'm bullish on it. Like, if it was volatile the downward way,
Yeah.
then it's a different story. And I think that institutional investors would be like, no, I'm not gonna cut. No way. Like, there's no way I'm gonna. Why would they even bother making a product for a something that's volatile downwards? Does that make sense?
Yes, I kind of get what you're saying, but I think it's also just like like the way stocks work is, primarily based on public opinion, right? So it's hard to
Sure.
say that that's right. You know what I mean? Like, even if Bitcoin rose to $20,000, it doesn't necessarily mean that Bitcoin itself is going to be a successful currency. It just means that people think really well of it.
You're right.
So that's one
Dude,
thing
and
that
actually-
I have to remind myself, because again, I'm sorry, this is just like, I came from neuroscience, so like businesses and finance, it's very rudimentary. You know what I mean?
I came from neuroscience, and now I'm looking at Bitcoin futures.
Oh, it's amazing. Okay, so another thing with
It just sounds
Bitcoin.
hilarious.
But this is why I think Bitcoin is the next hottest thing. I mean, it is already, right? But I'm saying
It is
why
the
it's
hottest
going
thing.
to be so mainstream is because it's going to be a slight tangent, but with blockchain, because I know there's a lot of like healthcare systems that are now implementing blockchain to keep records of their patients, which is huge, right?
Yes.
So the blockchain applications are not only specific towards financial gain, right? You can use it in a lot of different systems, and I think that's kind of how
Cybersecurity.
Yeah, it kind of trickled into, with the healthcare, health, neuroscience. So
It's perfect.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
it's
Sorry, keep going.
that's all
Blockchain.
debatable.
No, blockchain is different than Bitcoin for listeners.
Right. Yeah.
Like there's a very, I mean, people, because I actually personally work in the space. I work at PwC working on a few blockchain projects there. I won't disclose. It's probably going to be in the next podcast.
I saw that.
Talking,
Yeah.
like,
I saw that one
public
article.
information.
I saw that one article and I
Yeah,
sent it to you
it's
and I was
public
like, "There's no
information.
way this is what you're doing at work."
I know.
That's so cool.
Yeah, no, there's every financial services firm out there is actually working with blockchain because it's just the implementation of blockchain successfully will solve all the cybersecurity issues that you're reading about, especially Equifax. That was just not supposed to happen.
Can you
Bitcoin's
elaborate
not going to
that a
solve
little
it.
more?
Blockchain. Yes, I can, because I'm glad you brought up the healthcare industry use case for blockchain, because that's a huge focus at PwC as well, and financial services, other financial services firms. I'm slurring my words here. I don't know why. It's a Monday. It's a Saturday morning. So, cybersecurity has been a hot topic in the last year because there's been hacks left and right, hospital information. That's really important information. When people hear, they read the headline, oh, yeah, sure, some patient records just, they got it's called, I think it's called holding the information hostage. And now there's some ransom out for the information. This is crucial information. They need this information because the doctors need to know how much anesthesia to give me when I'm going under surgery. Otherwise, and if they don't, it delays. It number one delays the what's it called? What's the word? Procedure.
Yeah, procedure.
Yeah. Or operation.
Yeah, procedure.
Yeah, this is your field.
One of those.
Yeah, it delays it, and time in the healthcare industry, it's just
it's so
super
crucial.
important.
Yeah.
It's crucial. It's literally mission critical. And when there's a freaking hacker literally just holding the information hostage until someone pays, it's costing lives, not just money at that point.
Yeah.
And in every other industry, it's money and all this other stuff. But blockchain, how can it solve that?
Yeah.
It can solve that because it's no longer relying on outdated systems that the employees of the hospital don't even like using, and the information is on its own network. The hospital owns it. The hospital is responsible. People want to be responsible for their own things now, and that's a culture that's breeding, if not coming into realization slowly, because of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Like, Bitcoin is on the forefront of people wanting to be responsible for their own things. No longer do we need a world of banks or governments to look over literally our money. Our government prints our money. They also tax us on it, and they can print as much as they want, and people don't like that.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I think.
What am I looking for?
Yeah, just going off of that.
They don't like that feel. The vibe that it gets. The vibe. I'm gonna say vibe now. There's a word. What am I looking for? The word. Help me out here.
I would say vibe.
Enslavement.
Enslavement. No, that's
extreme.
pretty. Well, I don't know. I mean, some people would argue that it is enslavement, but.
I'm thinking Zimbabwe, man. Venezuela. Like, okay, they're not enslaved, but the government has ruined those people's lives.
Yeah, I think that's actually another thing that like interests me. Again, I'm getting most of my information from like that Andreas Antonopoulos podcast, and he did describe how, like, yes, while Bitcoin is unstable to people in the U.S., but there are certain countries where they might be in turmoil where Bitcoin would be more stable than their nation's currency, which is huge, right? That's huge that you can. Well, I mean, nobody would ideally want to live in an unstable country, but if you have the option of being able to take on Bitcoin as a more stable currency and be able to buy things online, digitally, and you would be able to fulfill your needs all because of Bitcoin instead of having to go through your country's currency, which I think is huge. There's definitely a lot of utility in that. But again, what Bitcoin, the main thing that people love about it is it's decentralized, which I think is iffy. Again, like we can go into the depth like another time, but
and let's tell the listeners why it's iffy. It's because let's get the elephant out of the room, or what does that say? I'm
get the elephant out of the room. My personal distrust in Bitcoin.
It's because of Silk Road.
Yeah.
Of course, that's the online drug. You can buy anything you
Oh,
want.
that's
on
what you
Silk
mean.
Road when it
Okay.
was,
Yeah. So of course,
That's why. Yeah, that's
there
why it's
is a
seen as
slight,
iffy.
there's a slight,
It's shut
I
down
guess
now, but
there was a way to shine Bitcoin in a bad light where it was a lot of like black market trafficking and all those, things that people find.
drugs,
Yeah, it's,
guns, bombs.
yeah, and they would use
You can
Bitcoin
buy
because
animals on there.
you can't trace it, right? So obviously that's an issue. That's not something we want to promote. I'm saying we as if we're all part of Bitcoin, but
Right.
it's interesting because and another thing with Bitcoin. Okay, this is just personally my issue with it is that I don't know who would be able to provide the assets should everything go to zero. Like at least with
What do you mean provide assets?
so like with the U.S. government, right? And there's debatability on whether or not you agree with this, but all the banks are subsidized. So if you had like $100,000 in your bank account and for whatever reason it just got wiped, the bank just foreclosed, the government is required.
FDIC insured.
It's insured, so you would get your money back. What I'm worried about is with Bitcoin.
There's no insurance on
There's
this.
no insurance with Bitcoin, right? And you might
There's
argue
none.
that if a bank, right, if a bank in the U.S. who's giving out fiat money just closed, then you'd be like, okay, well, where are we going to get the money from? We're just making it up anyway. There's no difference between that and Bitcoin. But the bank has properties. It has chairs. It has an office. There's things that it can liquidate and sell. There's still some goods there. There's physical presence that it can liquidate, and then that can translate to money that's returned to your pocket. Versus like Bitcoin, I'm a little iffy on just because I always assume what is like the most malicious thing that someone could do to me with this given system. And my distrust with Bitcoin has always been that I don't know who programmed it, right? The Satoshi, I don't know how to say it. It's the anonymous
Satoshi Nakamoto is
Yeah.
some mysterious guy no one knows.
I don't know if it's one guy, I don't know if it's 100 guys, but it's software. Software has to be updated, and I'm not well versed enough in software, so maybe somebody can correct me on this, but it seems to me that it is feasible that someone could slip in some kind of code that slightly siphons off your Bitcoin amount. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
We talked about
Yeah,
this.
we did talk about
no,
this.
and it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened.
It hasn't
for
happened. Yeah, it hasn't.
13.
But what I'm saying is that I don't know the intentions of the group that created Bitcoin. And I'm not saying that it's bad, because obviously blockchain has amazing, applications in healthcare. I'm thinking banks are probably using this too. But there's a lot of utility. I'm just wary of it, is all I'm trying to say. And I know. Actually, like, interestingly enough, another one of the appeals of Bitcoin was that it's you wouldn't know who the sender and receiver were, right? But I think you wanted to talk about how now we can, or the IRS was able to get names of people.
Oh my goodness. I think this is huge too. Like in tangent to with CME. Because okay, so we wanted, and this is a huge win for governments, not for Bitcoin. It's a big loss for Bitcoin and blockchain, in my opinion. So Coinbase is under investigation. Well, the investigation's over now. Really fast too. Like that was super fast. Like that was within a month, I think. Actually, no. I'm not gonna go on the record. It was really fast how the IRS was able to win over the case with Coinbase, against Coinbase rather, for, I think they said 14,000 user accounts which need to be handed over to the IRS under the investigation because they exceeded, I think, $20,000 in transactions on the brokerage. The exchange. You can call it an exchange. And yeah, that is huge. A huge win. Because they're putting a limit on it now.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
Yeah. And I know, I mean, just like somewhat related is that one of the difficulties with why people said that Bitcoin would never, I don't know, I feel like this might be good or it might be bad. I don't know. Because like Bitcoin, because it was anonymous between sender and receiver, it means that it's difficult for governments to tax, right? I think, I'm not 100% sure if I'm right on this, but I believe that the way the U.S. used to tax you would be if you could exchange, like let's say you and I exchange some Bitcoin, but then once you translate that money into U.S. dollars, that's when they tax you.
Yes, that's what. So that was that's the thought before the tax bill is on the table. I don't want to say too much on it because I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
But if you're really interested, Stefan, and also I need to look into this myself, the new tax bill, it's Section 1031 of the new tax bill, which directly impacts cryptocurrencies. And I don't want to say anything else besides that. We can follow up in the next podcast, and do some more research on it.
Mm-hmm.
But for listeners, look up Section 1031 of the new tax bill involving coins and bullion, and that is exactly what, like, the school of thought before is exactly what Stefan said, which was, if I don't convert back to fiat, I don't have to pay Uncle Sam the taxes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's on the table, it's on the chopping board now, and I think that the government is going to try to regulate this insanity is what it is. Insanity is what it is right now, but maybe, who knows, 100 years down the line, people are gonna say, why didn't they use Bitcoin?
Yeah.
I'm just saying insanity because it's been so blown up in the media in recent weeks. But yeah, that's as far as I know about the taxation. But it's not. It goes beyond the taxation, right? It's a huge win because, I mean, Coinbase, you have to hand over your identification to them. Some other exchanges out there, you don't need your identification. I know how it works is that if you give them more identification, they'll give you more limits. That's how it works on Coinbase and Bittrex, which are the two I use personally. I'm not endorsing them or affiliated with them in any way. That's just my preference. That's just how I learned about it, so you can do your research. I do like them, though, and I do recommend for newbies, crypto newbies. Is that what we're going to call it, Stefan? Crypto newbies?
Newbies, yeah, new people.
New people. We'll figure out a name. Crypto newbies, if you want to get into this space, Coinbase is your best bet, and then GDAX, which is it's an exchange that's under Coinbase. But we can talk about exchanges in a different podcast. This tax thing, though, I think is a huge win.
Right. So potential for this in the and this is just based off of our rudimentary understanding that the IRS can now know who's doing what, right? But so that takes out the appeal of having that anonymity of sending Bitcoin money from me to you anonymously, so that I'm not sure how that's going to affect what people think of Bitcoin, right? Because that was one of the core things that people really liked about it, is I could buy something from you, maybe something embarrassing, and then nobody has to know about it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, yes, exactly.
So
I do believe that we're entering the world. We're like in a different phase now where we have to start thinking about a world where Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and altcoins of the like will have to work side by side with governments like Russia, China, US, just worldwide. It's happening right now, and it's on the chopping board right now as we keep going on. And last night, even Donald Trump said that he's keeping an eye on Bitcoin. That's literally what he said. That's all he said. I'm keeping an eye on Bitcoin. But yeah, he said that last night in a tweet, or not a tweet. I think it was in an announcement, a small announcement in the White House. This happened on December 1st, and yeah, it's not going unnoticed. The IRS wants a piece of the action going on.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's a lot of money that they'd be potentially losing if majority of people started switching over to Bitcoin. I also think that, this might not be necessarily just a huge win for the IRS, though. I feel that the main concern with why Bitcoin would never overtake the US dollar, let's say, was the fact that it could not be taxed. And people thought, well, there's no way your government's going to let you use this as real money because you're just circumnavigating, this giant loophole of not paying taxes. But now that the
Right.
IRS does have a way of being able to tax us, my train of thought is, will this actually maybe help Bitcoin? And yes, we might lose anonymity between transactions, but would it actually help, make big institutions, like you see the banks, right? You see the private sector already. Yes, let's this is big, this is huge. There's utility in this. But I'm curious if this kind of thing where it quells the concern of taxes, will the government actually start, taking Bitcoin seriously?
Yeah, I mean the Fed, that's such a valid point too, and I'm really actually I didn't even think about it in that angle before. It might actually benefit because everyone might actually benefit from it because this is a sign that okay, we're willing to work with this new technology, right? We're watching it unfold. It's in its infancy. It's on a crazy wild bull run right now, and who knows? Like this tax reform, I know it sounds bad, but it could be a sign that the governments are willing to work with it. The Fed announced they're gonna announce that. I mean, they said that they were gonna make their own coin. Did you hear about
Yeah,
that?
I heard about this lightly, and I didn't look into it too seriously because it felt like, yeah, what is it called? Fed coin or something like that?
I don't know what. I think it might be called FedCoin, but they didn't say too much about it. They just said, oh yeah, we might announce our. I mean, we might make our own coin.
Yeah, I think
That's what they said.
it felt like a very
Just to make our own coin.
shoddy attempt at trying to draw some of the people who are using Bitcoin to use their coin just so they could tax them, right?
I mean, people might actually. I mean, what's the point of that? What's the fun in that, Stefan? The whole point is to evade Uncle Sam here. No, it's not. I mean, you should pay your taxes. Like, this is super idealistic in a world. Think about a world where you don't have to pay your taxes. Like, I was having a conversation with someone last night at a bar, and they said like, what do you he was very not sold on the idea of cryptocurrencies and he was saying how I'm benefiting from taxpayers' money even though I'm not actually paying in a world if I was completely on crypto.
Yeah, I could see that in
Right,
some
I'm a
sense.
leech.
I mean, like
I'm a
taxes are
leech.
definitely used to like maintain roads and stuff, and I'm guessing at some point in your life you're gonna cross a road, right? So I understand the concern.
Yeah.
I understand from that perspective.
Super idealistic.
Yeah, from that perspective, I understand. But I think even if the whole world switched to Bitcoin, we would still have to like taxes are always going to be there. Somebody needs to pay for roads. Somebody needs to pay for, you know what I mean? So I'm not too concerned about that, and it wouldn't surprise me if someday if there was some kind of way to integrate Bitcoin in a way that a portion of it would be taken out for taxes, in the same way that like your paycheck has a portion cut out for your taxes.
Yeah, on the gains you make.
Yeah, exactly.
But
So
nothing is stopping the network from me and you transacting.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen. I don't know. This is it could go either way. We don't know.
The topic, it's just a matter of time. In my opinion, it's just a matter of time. Technology plays out over time, and we're still very, very early on. It's super volatile. It's dangerous. It's scary. It's whatever you want to call it right now. It's a baby.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say is addressing what you were talking about before, adoption. It's going to take time to adopt this because in the United States, we don't need this. We really don't.
Yeah.
But in Zimbabwe, this is our only hope. This is our only chance of having a stable life. That sounds ridiculous to the average American, but that is their reality. And for those of you, and for the listeners who don't know, Zimbabwe is in hyperinflation. It's impossible. I mean, just because of it's impossible to get yourself. I don't know how to get your like. Do you know how to solve hyperinflation?
No.
I mean,
No,
I don't think
no.
any country has ever solved. I'm from neuroscience, but on a more serious note, like jokes aside, how do you solve that?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah, it's very difficult.
There's millions of people that are facing that reality, and this thing that moves 30% in one day is more stable and more trustworthy and more reliable as a currency than their own money. That is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's definitely mind-blowing.
World of Warcraft money is
mind-blowing.
more money than. Did you know, Stefan? World of Warcraft money is worth more money than Zimbabwe's dollars.
Okay. That's.
Yeah, it's truth.
I'm trying to register that. That's really crazy. Oh my god.
Dude, one day RuneScape money is gonna be more money than Zimbabwe dollars. It's coming. It's coming.
That's terrible. I mean, that's just. It's really hard to wrap your head around. That's crazy. But I think, okay, but what you just mentioned with that example, I think it is. I mean, I see the utility in that. I think that Bitcoin should remain, if it does want to be a key player, I think that it should remain untied to the thought of having everyone use Bitcoin. Does that make sense? I feel like to be financially stable, you would need to have Bitcoin and your country's currency. I don't think it's wise if a large portion of people switch to Bitcoin, like 100% Bitcoin.
Right.
You know, it's just because if your country's currency goes down, then at least you have Bitcoin as some kind of security. Or if your Bitcoin goes down, then at least you have your country's money as like you don't lose everything at once. So I think that Bitcoin can become very popular globally, but I don't think that it could ever become like the main currency for the entire world. I think that would be a bad idea. I think it's a good idea to have different kinds of economies.
Like 100% adoption.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that I know. I talked to some of my peers who are like super invested in Bitcoin, and they're like fanboys all the way, and they're very like
me.
Yeah, but do you feel that sentiment though, that like someday the U.S. dollar is going to be completely invalidated and it's just going to be Bitcoin?
I cannot see a day that will happen right now, but just think 300, 400, 500 years from now, if we don't just blow ourselves up and the robots don't take over,
The robots don't.
and
Yeah.
the world, the humans are annihilated. Like 500 years from now, that reality could be a possibility.
Yeah.
Yes, but in our lifetimes, no. And my framework has been like, dude, we both grew up with U.S. dollars as a mindset and a framework. We've been indoctrinated thinking everything in terms of U.S. dollars.
Yeah.
When I studied abroad in Prague, I told you this, I thought we exchanged money when we got there, and all of a sudden, my buying power was just like, I think it was 4x's of buying power. And I was honestly, I felt like a little king or a prince, whatever you want to call it there.
Yeah.
Because you can just buy everything. And I don't know how I got on that tangent, to be honest. But yeah.
No, but it is interesting.
Help me out there.
Like,
How did I get there, Stefan? How did I just get there?
We're just talking about exchanges between Bitcoin and currency.
Oh, we were talking about exchanges between Bitcoin, like how the Bitcoin will work side by side with the dollar, right?
Yeah, I think that's the right trend. I think that's probably the most healthy trend. And that'll be really interesting because I think that if you keep a keen eye on global economics, on global, currencies, what exactly is happening in the, for example, let's say when Greece filed bankruptcy, that we saw a surge in Bitcoin because people were moving their money out of I don't know what the Greek dollar is or what it's called, but moving it out and putting it into Bitcoin, right? So for the people that were able to do that, that it just, you were able to put your money that was completely, basically becoming devalued and putting it into something that would, maintain better. Bitcoin is still very volatile, very uncertain, very, immature is how a lot of people would describe Bitcoin, the Bitcoin market, but it's still more stable than your country's currency at that time. So I think it's nice, it's useful, right? There's use in that for sure. But I think that, as I said, it's a very immature market. I think there's a lot of things that need to be tightened up. I think that there was actually also, I just want to touch upon this very lightly, but I know in South Korea there was a few like mini bubbles inside the Bitcoin bubble where people would just once the price hit 10K ish. I don't know if this is a week or two ago, and then in the US it would fall back down to like 9.6. But for whatever reason, like in South Korea, that their exchange, they loved it so much that they just kept putting more money to it, so it stayed at 10. So there was a time where you could have, like there was arbitrage, like you could have two different prices for the same product at the same time. You could totally take advantage of that. So I think that the market itself is still very immature, and there's still a lot of fine tuning that needs to be done. But I'm very interested to see where this will lead us, and I'm not sure if Bitcoin is necessarily going to be that world power that is the main cryptocurrency. It might be Bitcoin 2.0. It might be something we've never even heard of before. But the whole field of cryptocurrency is incredibly interesting, and it also just depends on and I don't want to get too into it, but there is also a small, I personally believe it's a small movement of people who want to go back on the gold standard, and that's up for your own research, your own opinion. But whether or not you agree with having our system based on faith or having our system based on gold, right now I feel like the trend, and this is just my personal opinion, I'm not a financial advisor, so don't like move all your investments.
Insert disclaimer here.
But I personally think that it's a very difficult transition, especially with the introduction of cryptocurrencies, to move back to the gold standard. Like Bitcoin itself is programmed in a way that it emulates it has a natural decay that emulates the finding of precious metals like gold and silver. So in a sense that, like, I understand that's incredibly astute from like the programmers, right? To basically emulate a gold that isn't gold, if that makes sense. But because gold worked for such a long time, and then they just basically hit the refresh button. Let's make it digital. Let's make it streamlined. Let's make it a lot faster. And so a few things that
it's literally what they did.
Yeah.
There's only 21 million Bitcoin out there, and already 17 million are mined, and a few million are lost in the network.
Yeah, but I don't see the trend of actually genuinely going back to gold happening. I think that we've grown accustomed to fiat money based on faith. But
you want to know why? Because the trend is going to Bitcoin, Stefan. That's why.
There's actually also another trend that I'm keeping an eye on, where people are selling. I don't know if it's necessarily Bitcoin or if it's Bitcoin Gold. It has a name very similar to Bitcoin, but it's basically
it's Bitcoin Gold, which is a fork of Bitcoin.
Yeah, where it's backed by gold. So I'm very interested to see how that does. But
we can talk about forks for like a very, very long time, but I know we're coming towards the end of our first podcast here. We don't want to steal too much of your time, guys.
But you can see, like, just based on the tangents that Alex and I go on, it's definitely. I don't think you could honestly say that Bitcoin is a joke at this point. I don't think you could say cryptocurrency is a joke.
I don't think so either. There's just too many people in it.
There's the opinion of it obviously is an all-time high. All-time high. People are aware of Bitcoin, right? Even if you don't own it, you know of it. People have heard of it. So it's a very interesting trend that we're both interested to see where it's going to go, I think. Actually, we are running up on our time here, so we'd just like to thank everybody who chipped in and listened to the very first episode of Weekly Crypto Feed, and we're excited to see where this goes. It's exciting, but it is also kind of terrifying in some sense.
It is very much so an exciting space to be in right now. 2017, who would have known we're using coins as a currency?
Digital,
and
no less.
Yes, exactly. And we want to know what you think of the podcast, where you want it to go, what you want us to talk about, any comments, feedback, concerns. If you don't like our voices, no, I'm kidding. But yeah, let us know in the comments or send us messages. And thanks again for listening.
Yeah, and of course, again, we are not your financial advisors. We are not.
Insert disclaimer.
We're not like.
We need a disclaimer.
We're not experts.
We're gonna get a disclaimer.
But we're interested in it. Hopefully, obviously, if you're tuning in, you are too. So if there's anything that you think is interesting that you might want us to cover, send it our way. We'll take a look at it. Obviously,
DM us.
But for sure, until next time.